If swimmers rotate too much, too little, or at the wrong time, they're going to swim slower. As a big picture concept, this is pretty obvious, but what's less obvious is how much swimmers should rotate and where the rotation should come from. Let's keep it simple and find out what rotation is all about. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. How much should swimmers rotate? Which is more important, hip rotation or shoulder rotation? These are two related questions I've received recently, and we're going to tackle them here. Let's start off with why rotation occurs. In freestyle, it's pretty simple. The only way swimmers are going to get their arms out of the water to recover them is through rotation. The shoulders have to rotate because the actual shoulder joint doesn't have enough range of motion to get the arm behind the body and out of the water without any rotation of the torso. Just think about if you were laying flat in the water and you try to recover the arm out of the water without rotating. Even when I just try to bend the elbow and recover, I start to rotate naturally. Unless you have extremely flexible shoulders, you're going to have to rotate to get that arm up out of the water. The only time both arms do come out of the water at the same time is in butterfly, but instead of rotating, all you do is you lift up out of the water, and that allows the arms to clear the water. It's a different solution to the same problem when rotation isn't available. The shoulders just don't have enough range of motion, and that is why swimmers need to rotate in freestyle in order to get the arms out of the water. Swimmers might be able to get the arms out of the water without rotation, but they will not do so easily, and they're going to have to swing the arms low and wide, which is going to be a lot harder, and the shoulders are going to be moving side to side because of those low, wide arm recoveries. So rotation makes it a whole lot safer, a whole lot easier, and a whole lot more effective to recover the arms. Backstroke is a little bit different because swimmers are on their back, but the same idea applies. Now, imagine you're laying on your back in the water, and you want to get your elbow deep, your arm deep, in order to set up an effective pull. The only way that's going to happen is by rotating. If you just try to do it without rotating, it becomes really hard to get into an effective position. By rotating, it becomes a whole lot easier and a whole lot more effective. Again, the shoulders simply don't have the range of motion to get into the necessary positions without rotating the shoulders, without rotating the torso to allow for that extra range of motion so that the hands can get deep and set up an effective pull. In backstroke, it's difficult to recover the arms over the water, but it is very difficult to get the arms in the water in an effective position to create propulsion. So the purpose of rotation in backstroke is to get the arm in the water and so that swimmers can establish great positions and then hold them the whole way through the pull. So when it comes down to it, the purpose of rotation is ultimately simple. It allows the shoulders to have extra range of motion so that the arms can perform the appropriate functions. In freestyle, it's so that they can be recovered. And in backstroke, it's so that they can create effective positions to create a lot of propulsion. In both backstroke and freestyle, the amount of range of motion in the shoulder can determine how much rotation is necessary for an effective stroke. And of course, different swimmers have different ranges of motion throughout the upper body. And so that's why you can see different amounts of rotation, because the amount of rotation that's necessary to get into effective positions is going to be determined by how flexible the upper body is. Which leads us to the next concept, which is how much rotation is necessary. The accurate answer is enough. If swimmers can recover the arms smoothly, easily, and effectively, they're rotating enough in freestyle. If they can get into effective pulling positions in backstroke and they can maintain those positions throughout the whole stroke, they're rotating sufficiently. It's not about getting as much as possible. It's about getting as much as necessary to execute the key skills effectively and easily. If swimmers have less range of motion in the shoulders, they may need to rotate more. If they have more range of motion in the shoulders, they may be able to get away with rotating less. And why would someone rotate less? Well, that's less range of motion they need to move through, and so they can pick up the stroke rate, especially if they don't need that extra range of motion. That can allow them to move their arms faster, which can potentially allow them to move the body faster through the water. The appropriate amount of rotation is going to be dictated by the outcomes that are achieved rather than the specific amount of rotation that's performed. When it comes to rotation, what's more important, the shoulders or the hips? It's going to be the shoulders because the shoulders are what need to move so that the arms can get into the right positions. If the arms can get into the right positions, we're good. But in many cases, swimmers need a little bit more help, and that's where the hips can come into play. The hips are going to allow for more range of motion. They're going to allow swimmers to move the shoulders more, and that's going to become possible without adding any extra twists to the spine. To help feel the impact of the hips, stand up and then try to turn, look behind you, rotate the shoulders, but do not allow the hips to move. Then perform the same motion and then allow the hips to move following the shoulders. You'll find it's a whole lot easier. You'll find that you can get a whole lot more range of motion. It's the exact same thing in swimming. When trying to recover the arms, if you max out the rotation of the shoulders, adding a little bit more to the hips can allow for that extra range of motion without adding any effort. Same thing with the backstroke, getting the arm in, getting it deep. If the job can get done with just the shoulders, the hips don't necessarily matter, but a lot of times using the hips as well can allow for a little bit more range of motion without much more effort. The shoulders are what's driving everything, and the hips kick in with a little bit more range of motion as necessary to perform the desired movements. Now, what about the role of the rotation and propulsion? In freestyle, rotation can help swimmers create a little bit more propulsion. How? Good swimmers, regardless of the distance, almost always end up flat to the water when the hand passes under the shoulder. And once they get into that position, they rotate through as they finish the pull. That allows for more hand speed, and it allows it for a longer range of motion with good, effective pulling positions. Again here, the shoulders are driving the bus and the hips are just along for the ride, providing a little bit more range of motion, especially towards the end of the pull. And when it comes to sprinting, the hips aren't moving very much at all, and so almost all of that added propulsion is coming through rotation of the shoulders. What about the hip-driven freestyle that we tend to see in aerobic swimming and distance events? Well, what happens with that stroke is the timing of the pull coincides with the shift of the shoulders and the hips from one side to the other. When everything shifts quickly, that can help swimmers get a little bit more out of their pull. But even then, I don't think it's necessarily that the hips are creating propulsion or driving the stroke. It's just the shift of momentum from one side to the other that makes it a little bit easier to create an effective pull. And again, it's not about more rotation, it's about timing of the whole body rotation with the pull. In freestyle, it's still all about the arm recoveries, and the propulsion is an added bonus. In backstroke, I don't think rotation is contributing much propulsion at all. Why? For the most part, swimmers don't actually rotate during the pull. As we talked about earlier, rotation is important to help get the arm deep in order to create effective propulsive positions. But in order to maintain those positions, the shoulders have to stay rotated down. And so if they're staying rotated down throughout the pull, there's no rotation of the body during the pull. And if that's the case, I don't see how rotation can be powering the pull in any way during backstroke. Swimmers actually rotate after the pull so that they can quickly switch sides so that they can get the opposite arm deep into the water due to rotation. In backstroke, rotation is all about setting up the pull, not powering it. If you want to see rotation skills in action as demonstrated by elite swimmers in competition, check out the video here.